Hey, welcome back to Tuesday afternoon.
Hi everybody, and today we're making Bunzo Bunny from Poppy Playtime, Chapter 2. I'm starting out with the aluminum base, and I'm going to cover that with polymer clay. I'm just rolling out to a starter level so I can make sure that it is thick enough all over. I'm going to spread that out evenly, and then I'm going to add the clay to shape it. I want a shaped back that's curved, and then I want him to have cheeks on the side, and then in the center areas where his mouth goes. Now we're going to build up the mouth. I'm just going to put a strip of clay and check the profile to make sure it's correct. I'm adding the cheeks here. His head is a relatively easy shape to sculpt, and later I'm going to cut out the area where his mouth goes. I'm going to use glass gems for the eyes, and I'm going to use the smaller size that I have. Here's a comparison if you need to see one. I also want to note that he does have a hole in the bottom of his head, and this is where his torso is going to go up into. I put him in the oven for 275 for 28 minutes, and I went ahead and cut out the hole for his mouth. Here I'm just making sure the placement of the tongue is correct, and I'm going to cut off the extra polymer clay, and I'm going to put a dip in the middle of the tongue. I want kind of a rounded, smoothed area, and then I can go ahead and place it in. I want it slightly tipped up so you can see it. Middle two teeth is just one piece of polymer clay. I rolled out some polymer clay, cut it out to about the width between the eyes. I just wanted to add, if you forgot to cut out the mouth, you can do that, and we're going to have to rebake it anyways. Just when you're making the mouth, make sure that you pay attention to the sides of the mouth because it does have little peaks and there is a slight curve to the top of the mouth. After I cut out the mouth, I had put a very slight layer of polymer clay down, so that amount of polymer clay isn't going to add up to a lot, and it's going to be fine rebaking it. Here I'm just adding his hair, and it's just little tiny pieces of polymer clay, and I went ahead and baked it in the oven for 15 minutes. We're going to be working on the torso, and you're going to want to wear eye protection when you are working and cutting with wire. I would also recommend using eye protection when you're doing this section because I've almost hit myself in the eye several times with the wire. I went ahead and put down a piece of wax paper, and I'm building up the aluminum foil around the wire. I'm cutting off the extra wire here and making sure it fits up into the head nicely. After you get the aluminum foil in the shape that you want the body to be, you're going to add on your polymer clay. I went ahead and rolled out some polymer clay to the minimum thickness that I wanted. Here I'm working on the neck area, and I'm just going to extend that up a little bit higher than it is intended on being, but I always can cut it off if it's too long. Here I am working on the chest hair, and I'm just going to take some rubbing alcohol and smooth it out just a little bit. Next, I'm going to make the holes where the legs go and make sure they are the correct distance apart. And I'm going to go halfway in for the holes for the arms. Next, we're going to be working on the arms and his paw. We're going to roll it out, very simple shape, and then we're going to just push in little areas for his toes. I'm just smoothing these areas out and making sure they're rounded, and I'm going to cut out a dipped area for the cymbals. I'm going to take some rubbing alcohol and smooth that out just a tiny bit, and then I'm going to make sure that the arms are the correct length, and I'm going to make little holes for the wire to go down into. I went about halfway down into the arm for the wire. Here we're going to make the illusion of stitching where the two fabrics would normally meet, and I'm just going to take a little rubbing alcohol and smooth that out. Alright, so we're moving on to the legs, and wear eye protection when you are cutting the wire, and you're going to want to wrap the aluminum foil around your wire. Make sure that the wire extends down into the foot, and we're going to put polymer clay over the aluminum foil once you get it the shape that you want it. Now I always roll out my minimum depth of polymer clay, so that's what I did there. And I'm going to build the clay on top of my minimum requirement. Remember that the end of the toes are slightly higher. They kind of swoop out, and we're going to add in the fake stitching and the hole where the wire goes in the top of the leg. Here I'm adding his little toes, and then I'm going to smooth it out. And that's just that simple. You're going to want to bake that in the oven. 275, 28 minutes for all the pieces that we just made, the legs, the torso, and the arms. After it's done baking and cooled down, we're going to put the legs on. I'm going to add some glue and go ahead and put the wire in. And then I am going to sand the bottom of the foot to make sure he stands upright nicely. And I'm going to want to make sure that the legs are the correct length, and any added length I'm going to cut off with the wire cutters. I'm happy with the length. I'm going to put some hot glue in and push it into place. We're going to put stuffing around this, and then we're going to cover that with a t-shirt cloth material. Just when you're putting the stuffing on, just make sure it is the same width as the leg. I do recommend a t-shirt material because it has a lot of stretch, and we want him to be able to sit down, and if you use like a muslin material, it doesn't have very much give, and it's going to eventually pull away from the polymer clay where it's glued on. I went ahead and I put a rubber band around his feet just so his feet don't flop around. I usually don't assemble this early in the making process, but I'm actually want the torso and the legs together because I want to judge and make sure that the ears are the correct size and length. I'm going to measure out how long the ears are going to be, but there isn't really anything in comparison to actually seeing it in person, so I want that to be together, and then I can paint everything afterwards. The ears are just aluminum foil with a piece of wire in the top so it can bend around the top of the head, and I'm going to just put my minimum requirement of polymer clay on because these ears, even though there's not a lot of polymer clay on it, they're going to be super heavy. I'm going to make holes in the top of the head, and I'm going to put in the fake seam and smooth it out. After it's all done, I'm going to go ahead and bake that in the oven, and if I need to after it's done baking, I'm going to sand it. But remember, we're going to add texture on, so it's no big deal. I went ahead and made his symbols, just a simple shape. I've made them before, so I don't think I need to explain it. And then after I bake it in the oven, I am going to super glue it on. And here is all the pieces kind of together, just stuck into place. It fits really nicely. I'm going to go ahead and do a base layer of a darker yellow on, 2 layers, dab it on. And then I'm going to come back in with a lighter shade of yellow and dab that on top. The variation in color adds such a nice contrast and kind of gives it that material look. Each layer is going to need to dry before you put on the other layer, and I'm just going to paint the symbols. We're going to paint the inside of the mouth. That is red with a brown, and then the tongue is red with unbleached white. I didn't want to use white because I didn't want it to be a pink color, so I did the unbleached white. Next, I'm going to go over the teeth with some white, and next I'm going to show you how to paint the eyes. I went ahead and took the paint off one side and left it on the other so you can get a feel of how the paint goes on. It is different, and you might like it better one way or the other, but I wanted to show you that you could paint over it if you had already painted yellow on it. This is just black paint, and I'm letting it dry in between each layer. I did 2 layers of black paint, and then I'm going to put a finish over that. polyurethane. And then I'm going to touch up all the areas of yellow. If a little bit of the black got onto the yellow, I want to touch that up. If there's a little bit of red, I want to touch that up. I just want it to have a very crisp-like appearance. And I want to show people that it's okay to touch things up and that you're not going to be able to tell that they are touched up. When you're doing the face paint on his face, just make sure that the edges are rounded. Don't make them sharp. Here I'm just putting the polyurethane on his eyes, his teeth, and his tongue. I'm going to leave the inside of his mouth matte. And here is the pastel that I'm using on his face. You can use similar color. You don't have to use the exact same color. Just make sure that they're similar to this coloring. I'm going to shave off some of the pastel onto a tray and just blush it on. When you're making the blush on his cheeks, just start at the beginning of his tooth and the beginning of his bottom tooth. That's where the circles meet. If you notice the character model, it's exactly the same. So just use that as a gauge of your beginning point and your end point. I'm going to draw in where the seam is on his face. It's not very noticeable, so I didn't go ahead and sculpt it in. If you want to, you can, but I thought it looked really good, just kind of etched on there. And I'm going to use a gray to kind of do the shadowing where it dips down towards the eye. I'm also going to use the gray as the split area where his teeth goes. Just kind of blush all these areas on the hands as well and down his legs. And that's how I did it. At this point, it is really coming together and you can see how it's going to look. I went ahead and just placed all of the parts together, not gluing them yet. I just wanted to see what it was going to look like. And now I'm going to make some clothing. This is just an all-purpose muslin material and it's outdoor safe. I got it at Walmart, so that's where you can find it. And I'm just going to stretch it and glue it into place. It's a very simple outfit, and I'm going to put stuffing in where the legs go. And after I'm all done, I'm going to paint this. If you like my content, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be trying to get so much out. I've really, truly missed doing this. My oven went out and I've had one disaster after another, but I'm back in business and I want to make Pug-A-Pillar and Poppy, and let me know what you would like to see me make next because I'm excited. I love doing this and it's so much fun. So thank you. I'm going to use a similar technique and use chalk pastel and accentuate any of those areas in the folds that you can really see in the character model. We want them to look the same as the model in the game, so just accentuate those areas with pastel. Again, you can use any color that's similar. After you get done painting his clothing and adding on the pastel, you want to clean up any of the areas on the body with paper towel, wet paper towel, and then paint over it with yellow. Just touch up any parts that you might have gotten any green paint on to his body. Here I'm making his buttons. They're really easy. You don't have to have real buttons. You can sculpt them out of polymer clay and bake them in the oven, paint them, and add a little bit of varnish, and there you go. I'm just using green ribbon and then I'm gluing it onto the back of the button just so it has a smooth, even surface to glue it onto his clothing. Alright, now we're ready to glue the arms into place, and this is our final step. So go ahead and glue the wire into the arm, and then put hot glue into the torso as much as you can, and then push the arm into place and hold it. If you want to, you can glue the ears in, and you want to make a simple hat for the top of the head. I decided not to actually glue the ears into place because I want to be able to easily store it. So it's all done. What do you think? I did leave a space in the bag for a tail, but I did intend on making the box for display purposes, and I want to be able to secure him to the back of the box, and I thought his tail might actually interfere, but if it doesn't, I'm going to go ahead and put his tail on. Some other little details is that he does have a paw pattern on the bottom of his foot, so you might want to add that if you're going to intend on sitting. Thank you so much for watching, and I truly appreciate the support. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.